Kpaceguy here. What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, and today's topic is going to be phase, speaker phase. What I want to do today is talk about what speaker phase is and why it's really important to set this correctly in your home theater or in your 2-channel stereo listening system, especially if you have a subwoofer in your 2-channel setup. It's going to be really important to set this correctly. So first I want to go and talk about what phase is so we get a good understanding, and then I'll show you guys some representations in action of what phase is and what it's doing, and then I'll tell you how to correctly set it. So let's go ahead and talk about what is phase. So what is speaker phase? Well, on the back of your subwoofer, you may see a dial that says 0 degrees or 180 degrees, or you may have a knob that says 0 degrees up to 180 degrees. So that's what phase is a dial on the back of your speakers that's going to change the direction in which your driver, your speaker, is moving. And what does this do? Well, this allows your speakers to work together and not against each other. Typically, we want speakers to move in the same direction, but sometimes, depending on where your speakers are placed, specifically subwoofers, you may want your phase to be adjusted. So what is speaker phase? Speaker phase just controls what direction that speaker is going to move. Some people call it polarity, especially if you have a 0 degree to 180 degree switch. You're changing your polarity, your positive and negative. Think about it as a magnet. On a magnet, you have a north pole and a south pole. You can think of that as a positive or a negative. When you put two negatives together, they repel against each other. But when you put a positive and a negative together, they attract to each other. Sort of the same thing with speakers. When you change your phase switch, you're changing your polarity, your positive and your negative. You're changing what direction that speaker is going to move. So let me show you a little video of it in action so you guys can see speakers that are in phase, moving the same direction at the same time, or moving out of phase, which two speakers are moving at different directions at the same time. So on my right, I have two speakers side by side. One is in phase and one is out of phase. And if you guys notice, the drivers are moving in different directions. This is how you know your speakers are out of phase. Now, if your speakers are in phase, they will move at the same time. I'll show you that here. This is in phase when your speakers are moving in the same direction. So let me show you one more time. This is out of phase. And this one right here is in phase. So I know you guys have ran calibration and your receiver told you that one or two of your speakers were out of phase. What your receiver is trying to tell you is that it thinks that one of your wires are crossed, meaning you have a positive plug into the negative or a negative plug into a positive. So it's detecting an out of phase signal. That's not always true, but it's good to go back and make sure the receiver isn't correct, because if it is, then it just told you that you need to correct one of your speaker wiring. But most of the time, at least with mine, it's always been wrong. So now that we know what phase is, how do we set it up? Well, this comes really important with subwoofers. Subwoofers have variable adjustments. Subwoofers has variable adjustments for their phase, or you may have a switch 0 to 180 degrees. Now again, the ones that have a switch is just switching your polarity from positive to negative to positive. You're just switching that back and forth. But for those who have a subwoofer that's a little more advanced, you may have a knob that allows you to go between 0 and 180 degrees. Now this is what you really want because it allows you to fine tune your phase. So with subwoofers, you may have your phase set incorrectly. And how you'll know is you'll probably experience a lack of bass. Say you have a really nice, powerful subwoofer, two of them, and you have one in the front of the room and one in the back of the room. If you play with your phase switch, you may hear that sometimes you have no bass and sometimes you have a lot of bass. That's because your speakers are out of phase. And again, when your speakers are out of phase, they are moving in different directions and you're canceling out your sound. And I like to make this analogy for those who are beginners. This really helps you. If you have a husband and a wife scenario and your husband and your wife are arguing at each other, you guys are out of phase. You're just yelling at each other, canceling each other out. Nobody's really listening to anything. But when you guys are in phase, you guys are working together to solve a problem. In this case, make good sound. So your speakers are yelling at each other, going like this, canceling those waves out. So in your listening position, you may have a lack of bass. That may be because of your phase. Go in and play with your phase dial and see where it should be. Typically, if you have a subwoofer in the front and then one adjacent in the back, one of those should be switched on the polarity scale or the phase switch because they're canceling each other out otherwise. Sometimes they're not. So you want to play with this. It's really up to your room and your speakers what setting you should have. But if you're ever experiencing a lack of bass or a null in your sweet spot, you may have your phase set incorrectly. Go in and play with your phase dial, or have somebody switch that switch for you while you sit in the listening position and listen to see if you restore some bass or take away some bass. If you flip that switch and you lose your bass, well, then you are already in phase. But if you switch that switch and you get a lot more bass back, then you just now put your speakers in phase. That's kind of like a best, easiest way to kind of put it for you guys. So for me, I have the SVS PB4000s. I have 2 of them, and thank God they have an app that I can go in from my listening position and I can play with the phase right there from the couch. So I can actively hear exactly what's going on, when and where the bass drops, where it rises, and I can change mine between 0 and 80. I don't have a switch to 0 or 180. I have a dial between 0 and 180, so I can get like 74 or 89 or 11 degrees, whatever I need. And all that's doing is just changing the direction that speaker is moving until they're both in phase. So that may not be 180, it may not be 0. You may need 14, you may need 21, you may need 179. You never know. So what you want to do is listen. Your ears are your best tool in this situation. Take a seat and listen. Play some music that you guys are familiar with. Not movies, because it's so inconsistent. Play a song that you're familiar with in your position and try to play with that dial or play with that switch until you hear a difference. You really want your speakers to be in phase. Now for those who have just one subwoofer, this is going to be a little bit easier for you guys to do. What most people would do is put your subwoofer next to your floor standing speaker. A little bit of space in between, but put your sub next to one of your floor standing speakers and stand in between the 2 of them. Why? Well, this will allow you to hear the blend between the speaker, the loudspeaker, and the subwoofer. You want to set your phase until your subwoofer and your speaker seem to just blend, just mesh together, so that when the loudspeaker is playing its frequencies and it starts to cross over to the sub, it's a smooth blend. You really want to get this correct if you're running one sub, because you may have an issue of what we call localization. Localization is when you can hear where the sub is placed because it's either too loud or it's out of phase. You want to turn your volume up just a little bit and turn it back down until it blends, and then play with your phase. And you want to have a smooth transition between your floor standing speaker, which is on your right, and your subwoofer on your left, or whatever speaker you choose. But just stand in front of your sub, or stand in between your sub and your loudspeaker, and play with the volume and play with the phase until you get a smooth blend of bass between the floor stander or the bookshelf or whatever loudspeaker you have and the subwoofer. This is when you'll know, without any kind of mic or EQ wizard, this is how your ears will tell you if you have a smooth response. And again, it's up to you, your ears, and your room what setting is best for you. Please do not go to other YouTube channels, reviews, and forums and copy their settings, because 9.5 times out of 10, it's not going to be the one for you. So listen, use your ear, and see exactly what setting you need. If you have 2 subwoofers, then playing with phase is going to be a little bit difficult. But like I said in a previous clip, you want to sit down in your listening spot, play with the phase, play with the switch, and see which one really allows the subwoofers to blend together. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for phase and how to set it up. Now this is just the most generic, simplistic definition I can give to you guys, because most of you guys are either new into home theater or aren't audiophiles or doesn't want to be. So this is just like that really simple, simplistic conversation for you guys. Now we can go into comment sections and we can get really deep. My commenters will always tell you more information than maybe I will. But if you really want to have an in-depth conversation with me, feel free to send me an email down here at kpaceguy@gmail.com. I will definitely email you back, or just comment down below. I respond to all my comments if I think they deserve a comment back. But if you need a bigger conversation, you want to go more in depth, always leave me a comment down below. That's the quickest way to get in touch with me. I will instantly reply to you, and I'll keep talking to you until we get to a resolution for you. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Leave me down in the comments below, have you played with phase yet? Do you get that crazy message on your screen that says you're out of phase? Tell me if you have or not, and how did you fix it? Leave some tips down below for everybody watching. Like the video and subscribe if you're not already. We will see you in the next one. Kpaceguy out. Peace.